Hey, thanks for dropping by to the Planners on Purpose podcast, created by Naomi Tucker, CMP. Now, this space is for the event planners to encourage and empower you so that you can fully live your life on purpose. So before we dig in, please take a moment to subscribe so you get future shows. Now, here she comes, your host, Naomi.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome. This is Naomi. How are you? I hope you're doing well and having a wonderful summer. I am excited to be here. I've been having a really good summer, but it's actually been a really busy summer. So not sure if many of you are also feeling that when things are opening up, especially in the US, and I know even in Europe, things are starting to open a little bit, that we are getting a little bit more busier and meetings are starting to flow, and we're really trying to assimilate all our forces again to be able to make meetings successful. And we're seeing things come back in many different ways. In person is starting to rise. You also are starting to see hybrid meetings take shape, and virtual meetings still have their place. So on today's episode, I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about virtual meetings. Early July, I had a guest on our book club, which was John Chen. John has been in the industry for many, many years, and he is an expert at engaging in virtual meetings and had a book called Engaging Virtual Meetings. So I would love it if you were to listen to our recent discussion on the book club. It's a little bit of a longer episode, but if you do plan virtual meetings for your business, John has a wealth of knowledge and information, and you'll gain tons of insights from this podcast. So I would just love it if you go ahead and take a listen. And if you have any comments, definitely put them in the comments. I would love to hear what you think about this episode. All right. Well, I will leave you to it. Really enjoy this episode and learning a little bit more about how to engage in virtual meetings. Hello, John.
Hey, I made it.
You did. You made it. Thank you. I wanted to introduce you. This is a treat for me. John is a friend of mine. He's a veteran in the industry. He has his book, Engaging Virtual Meetings, which we'll be discussing today. He has over 35 years of virtual meetings experience, and he's put all his experiences into this must-have book that will ensure your meetings are engaging. So this book has helped turn on cameras. We always have some trouble with attendees turning on their cameras, and it saved many conferences. So if you're suffering from Zoom fatigue, or if you wish your attendees would turn on their cameras and turn on their energy, then this is a discussion you're going to want to listen to. So John, just a big hearty welcome to the Planners on Purpose Book Club.
Thank you so much, Naomi. We met through MPI, Meetings Professionals International, many years ago. And this is the best part about the industry. It's about relationships, about staying connected together, even when we weren't even supposed to touch each other, right? We're planners. We found a way.
Exactly. For those of you that don't know, John helped me through a board facilitation and a team building activity. He did such an amazing job. It was the best experience that I've ever had with a team. And thank you so much for that. And I'm glad that I met you then, because we get to talk today.
Yeah, I love that. In the team building part, it's right. It was around engagement, right? So the engagement is nothing new. That's what's exciting, right? It's like as a speaker and as a team builder, or we could have talked about team building for 2 hours, or you could have done something. And most people that tell me that doing something is more memorable,
yes,
more interesting, and more favorable to your audience.
Absolutely. So, John, we were talking about summer earlier. I don't know if you overheard that, but how we're all soaking in the sunshine and perhaps some water. What is your favorite summer activity to jump into or to do?
Well, summer activity right now is like we've reconstructed our whole backyard. So let's see, we've got 2 hammocks. We have an amazing barbecue, man. I got some amazing slow cook barbecue, like 24-hour chicken and ribs. And,
that sounds good.
And then we just refinished all the backyard furniture. So I resanded it all, repainted it all, and now it's kind of like having a new backyard.
That's amazing. Oh, that's great. I'm glad that you're able to put that time in. So hopefully you're getting some relaxation with all that hard work too.
So this is one of the tricks right here. Is one of these things is, tired of the Zoom background and the surf, well, just take your camera, shoot something. This is my backyard. I shot for like 20 minutes and I made it a repeating loop. And you can put this here inside of Zoom, and then you can get interesting motion-based backgrounds, but that are personal to you.
Okay, perfect. And this is Zoom that you're on right now.
Well, no, this is actually, so I can put this camera anywhere. I finally upgraded to something called OBS, Open Broadcast software. So I use this on Zoom, but now I can use it anywhere. So StreamYard, Restream, any place that I show up, I can actually look like this. And so now I can do things like this. Oh, let's go to my ocean office, and now we can suntan after we're done with this interview now.
Oh, that sounds good. So that sounds perfect. And you don't need a green screen behind you because of the technology, right? Or
in this particular one, I do have a green screen, and I'm going to show some wicked cool stuff. There's actually some stuff since I've written the book that I want to show you that'll be special to your audience.
Awesome. Well, before we jump into that, why don't you go ahead, share with us your journey, because 35 years is a long time to have been in this industry. So many of our listeners might want to know how you got started in the industry, your brief journey, and just how you landed into this virtual event world.
Oh, wow. So hold on. Give me 1 second and I can tell the short version of the story. Here we go. So one of the parts here is that I specialize in team building. So that's how Naomi and I met. I actually have also an FAA drone pilot. So I've been doing team building now for 24 years. And I have the notion of creating the largest number of large group photographs with team building events with a drone. So anyway, so that's what I used to do. And now, here are some key items here. So you talked about my journey. Of course, in March of 2020, coronavirus went down, and I had this happen to me. So this is 15 canceled programs. So for the planners who are on here, I know you're probably having some empathy pains that we had about trying to experience March of 2020 last year. So, this is what happened to me, because a lot of my events are still actually face-to-face. But what happened was this. So Naomi, do you remember this? Do you remember this program called Prodigy?
I do.
So Naomi knows that this was actually one of the first graphical interfaces for an online meeting system. And so this is what I love to tell the kids, right? This is when modems made noise. So I was on Prodigy. So this means I've been meeting online for over 35 years. I've been looking at the dynamics and saying, what are we going to do with this? And so the key with it is that I had already written this book. This book is called 50 Digital Team Building Games. And I wrote it in 2011. And what I've been trying to tell Naomi is for years, I've been saying, hey, we could meet, we could build teams and relationships. We could save all the travel fares and you could have dinner with your kids at the end of the day. And everyone said, that's great, John, but here's a bunch of money and I will see you in Wisconsin. So until March of 2020. So what I did was my intuition said, hey, now that I have all this extra time, why don't I put on a program called Virtual Team Building? So this is a class I put out that was free. It was based on my experience, and I kind of gave it back to the world as a way to deal with coronavirus. Mm-hmm. And the key about it is that class went viral. Over 5,000 people took that class last year, Naomi.
Wow.
And so with that, I started sending out emails about the class saying people have taken this. And my publisher, which is John Wiley & Son, says, hey, John, that's great. Do you want to write your second book? And for those who want to be authors, you should say, yeah, I want to do that. So I wrote the second book, and it actually took me 1/3 of the time. This book was on the ultimate rush. So in publishing time, I think I started in April or May, and it was available on the shelf by October. And in publishing time, that's like record fast. So anyways, I finished this book. It came out October 20th, and it hit the #1 list here on Amazon, the #1 hot new release list on Amazon when it came out. And so since then, I've been spending most of my time now, instead of doing team building, I still do some virtual team building, but the majority of my time is actually spent now designing, producing, and then sometimes speaking and emceeing at virtual programs. So that's a little short version about me.
Oh, gosh. Amazing. So the book actually came, it was amazing that you're working on it while this pandemic was happening. So it was timing, right? so key. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's one of those things that just kind of, to me, like I ask people, right? The pandemic sometimes gives you a gift. What's yours? Because mine is this book. And this book, I've been trying to get people online for years, and they just like, nope, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to be in person, blah, blah. And then, suddenly they didn't really have a choice.
Right.
And now people have experienced it. Now you've seen the other side, Naomi, right? Which is what I've been trying to tell people for years. It's like going, some people don't want to go back.
Right. It's been an interesting split, right? How many want to go back and go back fully in person, and how many are embracing this virtual world. So what have you seen in your business, with how people are split between the two?
Yeah, I have a lot of companies that are starting to come back, right? There's a lot of, apparently one of my friends is a chief of staff. So I'm helping with this cohort. So I'm getting to listen into some large companies' chief of staff. And there's a statistic that says that 45% of the people are thinking of leaving, or if their work forces them to come back to work full time, that they will quit.
I have heard that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's one side. And then the other side, of course, like, the events industry is like, we wanted to open up yesterday, right?
We're like, come on, get those meetings in. Let's do this.
And some clients are like that too. They are taking the opportunity to go, in person as soon as possible. They're using, I think, some of the key precautions, such as everyone's got to be vaccinated to do such a thing. And maybe even doing some other procedures on top of that. But I still think there's just a lot of unknowns. I think two things are in my favor, which is one is companies have recognized the economic impact of virtual meetings, right? When a lot of the majority of budget is spent on food, travel budget, and the hotel.
Correct. Yeah.
And you get a benefit for that, but now you see that you can actually achieve quite a bit without that. Companies, they may or may not like some of those aspects, but when they see that they're saving money, they're going to pay attention. And so. Right. So for myself, Naomi, I'm actually making the choice now that I'm going to stay on virtual as long as I can, because there's lots of other meeting planners around the world. And let me just tell you, I think many of you are way better than me as a meeting planner. And as a digital meeting planner, I don't know if there's very few people that have as much advantages as I do. So I think I'm better in this spot. And so that's why I'm going to stay here and see, is there enough business, for me to stay here longer than that.
Yeah. And we need you there too, because there's just so many people organizations want to see how this can help them leverage their business, and this whole hybrid, right, fascination. What I've been seeing is some people want to go either in person or virtual, but none want to stay in the middle. And I feel like there's so much that can be leveraged by people staying in the middle and leveraging hybrid and leveraging those audiences that can't really get to those events normally. What do you think about that?
Yeah, the hybrid is going to be big. And the key here is that you have to do hybrid right, I think. I think there's a lot of bad hybrid. So to me, there's 4 levels of hybrid here. Have you heard about this yet?
The 4 levels? No, I'm happy to hear. Yeah.
Okay, great. So the 4 levels of hybrid go something like this, right? The first level of hybrid, of course, a hybrid, just to make sure we're on the same page, right? You have some number of in-person or physical people and some number of virtual. So the first level is just kind of what I think we've seen is, you set up a camera and you broadcast what's happening live to the virtual audience. Yeah. And we've seen that in the past. Now, it's not very engaging, but it's probably the easiest thing to do. You can put up 1 or more cameras and then show that. So I think that's one part. The second level is now where 1 or more person on either physical or virtual can interact with each other. So examples could be, as a virtual speaker, if you put me on a big screen and I get a camera back into the audience, then I can kind of see and interact to the group, right? Okay. The inverse is an in-person, right? Not just speaking from the room, which is actually really hard, but I have one location at least set up. So if I can come up there, I could ask a question to the virtual audience and they can see and hear me clearly.
Yes.
Right? Okay. The third level is I think you know our good friend Tara Lashenko, right?
Yes, from MPI.
Tara Lashenko is a well-known MPI facilitator for board meetings, and she actually has, I think, some of the most hybrid experience. So in the level 3 is what she looked for, was every single virtual and every single physical person could interact with each other. So what that requires is, like, let's say you had 10 virtual and 10 in person, right? The 10 virtuals all call in on their computers. And the other 10 were separated by desks 6 feet apart, but they all had their own mic and ran into one mixing board. So you remove this echo problem we're also familiar with. But they also turned on their laptop and used their camera so they had their own face. So they could see the in-person people, but the virtual people can now still see their face like as if they were participating on screen.
Oh, I love that. And Tara is doing that right now?
She did that last year.
Did she? Wow.
She ran probably 10 to 20 board meetings like that, and for multiple days, 3 to 4 hours a day. So, you would know whether what worked or didn't. So she found systems that worked, especially in that hybrid scenario. And the last level is like the level 4 is really where you kind of become a participant in one or another. And what I mean by that is we hypothesized this like 20 years ago. Imagine that you had somebody, let's pretend like they were in the black lycra suit, and they were carrying an iPad around and it had Naomi's virtual face on here. So it's like an iPad running Zoom or FaceTime, and that you could interact with people, but you have somebody walking you around so you could see what the stage looked like and what the buffet looked like, and you can have 5 people. So that you have people avataring for you. The other choice that we saw for that is like where you have a buddy system, like somebody who's attending in person agrees to take somebody virtual, like on an iPad or some device, and walk them through the event and kind of have them as another person.
Yeah, so, I can see how hybrid is huge, and it's going to be huge. We have a lot of people, though, are saying, oh, my gosh, it's just too much work or it's double the cost. How do you combat those type of, objections that some of our clients have?
Well, number one is I did my first hybrid event last week, and it was a learning lesson, let me tell you. Some of the ideas are right, and, of course, some of the ideas are challenges, but it was for an award show. One of the things that I think that has happened is that there's this unique phenomenon that is now created. So number one is down here at the bottom, Naomi, is you run your own Zoom. It doesn't really cost anything, or maybe, $20 a month to get your Zoom account, right? And then remember long ago, if you wanted to start live streaming, it was kind of like in this $100,000 level, right? You had to get production cameras, you had to get production grade stuff, and so forth and so on. But there's really emerged this middle spot where for less than that, right, somewhere in between, you can really create something. And so basically, with my computer and 8 iPads and iPhones, I created an 8-camera setup.
Okay. Wow.
So I had the ability to mix kind of like an Academy Award style show using maybe $3,000 worth of equipment. Maybe
now
4.
everyone has to see your setup, John. You have to show everyone how this looks. Hold on.
So
here we go. Look at that.
This is the key part of the setup. There's actually, here, let me lower this camera for a second, 6 screens, right? So there are 6 screens on side this setup. There's an iPad in front of me so we can actually play music. I have an iPhone to the left of me. I'm actually watching your live stream on my phone. And then I have 6 laptops on the side here, which I can use for a variety of things. I actually I've been in 6 breakout sessions at the same time and recorded them all separately.
Wow. So how do you keep it all straight? What is the secret to keeping it all straight? 6 breakout rooms, multiple things going on, watching live stream on your other phone. How do you stay sane?
The tip I have is what I call screen mapping, right? And screen mapping is basically the meetings planner's guide to where do you put stuff. And so as I develop systems, I always put something somewhere. For instance, like the run of show that like I would be working on, I always put up here on the top right.
Okay.
Right? So like if I have Zoom up and running, I always put the chat and the participants to the next screen on the right-hand side. And so I keep everything in a certain spot. And usually that's part of the planning is saying, what am I going to designate every location for? And with that, I've been able to keep track of a 1,200 person conference, as well as sometimes 3 chat lines, right? There was a staff chat, there was a larger staff, all the ambassadors chat, and then there was the audience chat for a room. And so I'm actually able to keep up of all of those. Have you ever been a lifeguard, or have you ever seen a lifeguard go through training, Naomi?
No, well, probably a little bit, but maybe not the really important stuff.
This is our shout out to the people at Great Wolf Lodge, right? If you ever watch a lifeguard, you'll see that they're always doing this.
Yeah, just constantly looking.
They're scanning, right? They're constantly taught to scan. And so that's actually what I'm doing when I'm producing a program is I'm scanning. And so that's why I'm so fast in seeing somebody raise their hand or somebody chatting or somebody needs help, right? So it's because I'm always looking at all those things. And I understand it's difficult. It takes training. It's
Yeah.
not native. And that's why if you've seen some people, they're speaking and they can't see the chat and speak at the same time, is because they just haven't practiced it. And so that's what, anyway, so that's one of the ways that I keep it all organized is there's just put things in the same place over and over and then practice and develop systems so that they have a high odds they're going to work.
Yeah. And you say that you're producing meetings. Do you have a fine line from if, let's say, your client wanted you to be participatory and be on camera? Do you differentiate those roles so that you can keep scanning or?
Yes. And I found, yes, when I've overcommitted. I mean, even I have my limits here. So that's what I had told people too, is that I used to do all this stuff myself. And then, of course, in one time I forgot to hit record on a really important meeting. And so the whole key that I have is a tip called never lead a meeting alone, right? If you're on Zoom, the shortcut is never Zoom alone. And by splitting these roles up, even for me, when I present my main programs, I now have a producer because it allows me to do this. Stay focused on you, right?
Absolutely.
And then let the producer do that. So yes, I try and tell my clients, I start to tell them the line when, okay, you're running into the line where you should either hire another person or know that I'm going to be subpar, right?
Yeah,
And so,
absolutely. We have a question here from I Am a Wisdom Seeker. What are some ways to justify the need for hybrid or in-person meetings / team buildings now that a good percentage of organizations have been strictly virtual for the past year? Thank you for your question and welcome.
yeah,
John?
I am wisdom. I like that. Justify the need for hybrid or in-person. You know, the one part is like, I don't think you have to justify to anybody about an in-person meeting now because the value is so high. Like people, they're seeing each other, they're going crazy because they haven't seen anybody, especially for all those who are, you know, relationship and extrovert or whatever you want to call it. People, they've missed that. So, but I think to justify hybrid or in-person, I think there's two things that are going on. I mean, number one is right. Is there a value for the audience being in person, right? And if there is, right, then hybrid is this middle spot where you can actually, if you do it right, you have pods of people, and you can do the things that you can't do very easily online. So, for instance, you know, location-based things like if you and I are at a party or we're at a networking event, right, Naomi? If you and I start talking, we have this easy location bit, which is like if we're close to each other and somebody else is 8 feet away, then they can still be talking but not be heard inside of us. And on video, it's really hard to do some of these things. So that's what I would say. There's some of the justify the hybrid and in person. I think what you really have to do is one weigh the cost of course doing it, and then the benefit. The benefit for doing it. So I think people still probably won't disagree that there are certain things that are best done in person.
Yeah,
Right?
like even networking, and there's a value. I think there's a value to networking online and a value in networking in person. So, and it may change for different organizations. So probably having to go through what that is for each organization and figure out what is going to be the valuable thing for them to do.
Yeah, I think the other way to answer this question though is what we were talking about, right? Which is like, I think the other side too, that like you can easily not justify hybrid and in person, which is like if all we need to do is either do some work or trade or do some like a more light networking or budgetary is the number one thing that comes in there, then that would justify the need for virtual, right? Meaning that if you can do it for less and get the same effect than hybrid and in person, you're probably going to do that. So I think that's the other part. You have to look at, I think the three factors are what's the in-person benefit, right? What's the cost for it? And then of course, what's the risk for it? So these hybrid and in-person now, as you can tell, is still in a changing environment, right? With number of states growing, nobody knows exactly what's exactly 100% safe. And so I think you have to deal with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your question. And just a reminder to anyone else that's out there, welcome. And John is here for our book club. We're talking about his book, which is The Engaging Virtual Meetings, is right here. And he is an expert at virtual meetings and events. So definitely put your questions in the chat so that we can answer them. So I wanted to jump in real quick, John, and basically ask you about the Engage method. And I know that this is a method that you have listed in your book for engaging in virtual attendees. So you mentioned that there's a remedy, right, for common virtual meeting problems, and that this Engage method helps. Can you tell us what this method is? What does Engage stand for?
Excellent. Thanks, Naomi. So this six-step method really stands for six things. Each letter stands for something. And every time you do one of them, the odds of your virtual meeting being perceived as engaging go up. And so the best part about this too is that these are all things that I've been collecting and refining over 35 years. And over the past 16 months, I really got a chance to see that they work. So we've used this in a 200-person international conference that was running 24/7. We've used it in a 1,200-person conference, right, where 200 people were working together to make it feel engaging for 1,200. And it worked. It was actually the only conference, I believe, in the training industry that was 100% live. The other organizations relied on pre-recorded material. And so, to me, engagement is one of the number one things. So let's go through this. Engaging virtual meetings. Okay, so we have Zoom fatigue is one of the challenges that are there. And our solution for it is Engage, right? So Engage is a 6-letter acronym. And so every letter stands for something. So the E is engage and interact with every attendee. So Naomi, the easy part is like, everyone says they want engagement. So all we're telling them is engage. Now that sounds easy, but it's so easy. Even the best speakers have forgotten easy things like how to go back and engage with the audience as opposed to just speak for 60 minutes on some webinar. Even this, standing up. I can tell you now, it's 16 months past pandemic, and many of us have forgotten that actually standing up when you're presenting will actually be better for your groups. So our key aspect here, though, is have a plan to engage and interact with every attendee before the end of the meeting. There's some very simple methods to do it, just like even by having the attendee list and just checking off that somebody has said or chatted something, that will help out. So that's the E. Right. The next one is this overwhelmed host, right? So I told you I started running meetings. So here's all the things I have to do to run a meeting. I have to write the marketing, write the registration, set up the Zoom room, set up the security, keep track of engaging with every person, record and stream to Facebook Live, share the slide deck, chat to attendees while presenting. And I got to set up and run the breakout rooms, and then I got to set the chat logs and the video to everyone. And, at the end of that, I'm exhausted. I don't know about you. And so...
it sounds exhausting.
You're exhausted just listening to it. Right? Yeah. So the key here is that the N stands for never lead a meeting alone. And so, the first thing that you can do is offload some of this to a producer. And even for those of us who are experts, even myself, is that virtual meetings have another aspect beyond a physical meeting, which is all this technical stuff around us, right? Cameras, mics, chats, everything else. And so we just find that if you can let that aspect go or delegate that to somebody else, then again, you can stay focused on this part. One of my best examples is I had a person in a BNI meeting. BNI is like the referral network. You meet and give business referrals. And she came back and she says, I have not been able to get my meeting to end on time since March, which was March of 2020, the pandemic. And they went virtual at the time. And so I listened to her and I gave her this tip, never lead a meeting alone. She came back next week and she said, oh my gosh, John, you're not going to believe this. I finally got my meeting to end on time. I'm like, that's fantastic. But of course she goes, but wait. There's more. She goes, I put back in 18 minutes of content I threw out trying to make it on time, and I still ended on time. I'm like, that's fabulous. How did you do it? She goes, John, I didn't get one person. I got 2. So she got 2 people. They're helping to do things. They're admitting people. They're chatting. They're muting people, whatever it is, right? So she could actually, as the presenter of the meeting, stay focused on leading the meeting. And then the side benefit is that she's going to give up this leadership role in 4 months. She has 2 people now who are trained
yes.
to do this for next year.
Exactly.
Right? Succession planning industry.
Yes, I love it.
All right, so you've probably seen this, a lot of bad backgrounds, right? I
Oh,
love
yes.
your background, by the way. Naomi has definitely taken care in what she's showing in her background because some people do this, right? Which is too high, too close, into a window. And my good friend, I don't know how to use a green screen, or I don't have it. Right?
That's bad.
So the G here stands for good looks, which is this, right? Is if all we have is this window, figure out a way to look good. 60 to 65% of our language as humans is body language. And if you aren't showing that well, then you're missing. If your camera's off, you're missing that whole part. So I have a quote that goes with this too, right? The background of our video conferences is key to the image we present of ourselves, right? I'll say that again. The virtual backgrounds that we have are key to the image we present of ourselves. So much like our offices that we had, or if you're a meeting professional, the meetings that you create, they say something about you, right?
Yeah.
Your virtual backgrounds are exactly the same way. So you're a little bit of a sports fan, Naomi?
A little bit. Yeah, when I have to be. More so like 10 or 15 years ago than now, but go Packers.
Okay, good. All right.
There you go.
So a gentleman was interviewing for a job during the pandemic, and he looked up his interviewer, and the interviewer was a Lakers fan, right? So he changed his virtual background to the Staples Center.
Oh.
And so he logs on, right? And the interviewer logs on, and then he goes, "Okay, you got me." So they talked about Lakers for 5 minutes, right? And he said he kind of warmed up after that. And the good news at the end of the story is just because that person used the virtual background, this person actually got the job.
That's great.
So think about what's in your background and think about what you can do. That's G, good looks. So the next problem, of course, is people talking over each other. All these virtual technologies, we don't have the great ability for two people to talk at the same time. So the A stands for air traffic control. Right? This is a video of 5,000 flights in America flying at the same time, and they never crash into each other. Why? Because we have air traffic control.
Yeah.
And so your audio channel on your virtual meeting should be the same way. As the host of the meeting too, I feel it's your responsibility, right? If you let people talk over each other in the meeting, it's now on you because you let it happen, and now it's always going to happen.
Yep. Yes.
So A is air traffic control. This is still one of the top 10 problems, too, that people have said is people talking over each other.
Well, I think people, it's just they want to be nice and they don't know how to interrupt. But yeah, your book helps with a lot of those tips. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and that's exactly it here. Like when I'm working on presentations, like in a conference, I always look at the transitions. Like, how do we hand off? So how do I know that Naomi's done talking and she's going to hand off to me? When it's a large audience, I make sure that people have some kind of communication system like, okay, now back to you, Naomi, right?
Right.
There you go. So, okay, one of the problems was working online. So I had 7 PhDs in March of 2020 trying to make a decision in a virtual meeting about their students at this college. And in an hour, they said they could not make the decision. Why? Because they had no practice in virtual meetings and they had no systems for making decisions on virtual meetings. So the G in engage is get productive with virtual tools. So there are a number of tools. In fact, I just taught, you're going to be proud of this, Naomi. Last week, I taught my first 12-person BIPOC virtual producer course.
Oh, wow. I think I saw that. That's amazing.
It is amazing. And even people at the beginning of the class going, why do I need to know so much about Zoom? I think I got it. And by the end of the class, they're like, oh, I had no idea about the breadth of even Zoom by itself, let alone tools that are available to it outside of Zoom. And so, so G is get productive with virtual tools. Figure out the right tool for the right job. And this last piece, for the right audience. And when I mean the right audience, don't give an advanced tool to an audience that just got on Zoom, right? Let them find ways for them to be successful and try out tools before they have to use them for real work, right? Okay, last letter. Last letter. Okay, Naomi, have you had Zoom fatigue at least once this year?
Yes, I have.
Okay. What's your maximum number of hours in a single day on video?
Oh, on video? Maybe when I'm producing or not producing an event?
Either or.
Either 6 to 8, maybe it could be.
Mine is 16. And this is a poll by a group too. Look at this. This poll by these are public information officers. 12% of them said they average 9 to 11 hours on video a day.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, anyway, so Zoom fatigue is a real problem, right? And I've had it. And I think there's three key reasons that you get Zoom fatigue, right? Number one is that you don't have the muscle for it. So if you had not been on Zoom or any other video platform before March and then started doing 8-hour days on it, it's going to hurt. It's like if you didn't work out and you try and do CrossFit, that's going to hurt. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the second one is like, is when this happens and, you get this great speaker on your book club. They're just about to make their most important point and
no sound. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just messing with you, Naomi.
Hi, John.
But when you have technical problems, you have to lean in when you get elongated values and frozen faces. Is that you have to spend a lot of extra energy, and that's another piece of Zoom fatigue. And the last one is my favorite. It's this one, Naomi. Well, I'm going to talk to you about.
Yes, I know that all too well.
My very exciting book. Okay, sorry. So if your speaker's not engaging, then it's painful. It's just a struggle to be in that meeting. So one of our last tips, the E in engage stands for this, which is end your meeting on a high note. Now this sounds simple, and we actually pulled this from product market research. So in a 60-minute demo, if you can architect a high note with your product in the last 5 minutes, people are more likely to buy. I think your virtual meetings are exactly the same way. And I've told speakers, right? A lot of speakers end on Q&A where it kind of dies, right? It doesn't really end. It kind of ends down here as opposed to here.
Yeah.
But I've given this tip, and in an entire conference, every presenter committed to try to do something to end on a high note. And the attendees responded back to it. One with high ratings, and number two saying, I'm ready for the next session because they felt energized before they move on to the next part. I believe that if you end your meeting on a high note, that people will come back to your meeting ready, prepared, engaged, their camera on, if you arranged a great meeting. So that's the 6 letters of engage.
Wow, thank you so much. Now, everyone that is watching and those that are coming on the replay, this is something you probably want to rewind and go back and write down all of those different kind of acronyms and what John mentioned, because it's so key to engaging virtual meetings. And that's really what the whole premise of the book is, right? Built upon and around. So I definitely encourage you to take a look at that and grab John's book if you haven't already, because there's so much in here. And I know we have a limited amount of time, but we could talk about so many things. John has included different tips, different ways to engage, different exercises that you can use. There's so much in here. It's packed full of goodness. So definitely get that. That's just another plug for you, John.
Just as a side note too, Naomi, a lot of the links go to the book, go to a website called engagingvirtualmeetings.com. And I've been adding new tips there. So things like using PowerPoint as a virtual background, like you've seen me here, that's actually available to you. And I can tell you, Naomi, less than 1% of the people are actually use it, but it's available to every person who's using Zoom. And I'm putting up information like that saying, this is exactly how you do it. And people have been adopting that.
Yeah, I shared one earlier on my Facebook page about, I think it was 250 ways to engage your audience. I felt like that was such an amazing post that you did. And just so many great ideas if you're just looking at a way to engage, to talk to people. So good, so good. So make sure to check that out. And John, thank you so much for putting that over in the chat if you want to check John out at his website. So again, please put your questions if you have any about virtual meetings. We have John here for a few minutes longer. But John, I wanted to ask you about speakers. Like you mentioned, sometimes we might have a speaker that is not as engaging. And sometimes our speakers aren't set up correctly and, kind of their backgrounds aren't set up correctly. So many things can go wrong. And I know that there's a checklist that you mentioned in your book and some tips that you had around making sure your speakers are engaging and maybe even a checklist on how to navigate that. Can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah,
absolutely. So this checklist I brought out, and actually one of my NSA, National Speakers Association friends said, I was going to use mine, but you have 16 points and I only have 4. I'm going to use yours. So let's go through the 16 real quick here. And I tried to put them in order of what you want to do. But this is for a speaker's checklist. And let me let you know, I've actually coached hundreds of speakers, including some professional speakers. Oh my gosh, Naomi, you're gonna love this. I got to meet Damon John from Fubu.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
the Shark Tank guy, right?
Shark Tank. Yeah, I was going to say.
I didn't have very many comments for him, but I did get a chance to make sure that his stuff was going to be great. Okay, the first one is before a big day, I reboot. I reboot my computer, right? It doesn't matter. Like I have like one of the biggest computers, but I can tell you that rebooting a computer will decrease your odds of having a problem on your event day. And I just do this as a standard practice. The next one is your network, right? Plug in. I wired my whole house over the pandemic. And so every computer in this house can be plugged in, and it is way better. Even if your computer is sitting next to the Wi-Fi, I can tell you that I very rarely drop a frame. The software like Zoom, you want to make sure that you're upgrading Zoom software on a regular basis because new features are coming out every day. In fact, I subscribe now to Zoom's blog, and they tell me in the release notes when it's coming out. And, like in this last release notes, Naomi, did you know that it supports pronouns? You can actually put your pronouns in a section on Zoom.
Oh, no, that's cool.
So cool and things. Multiple screens, right? If you have the ability to have multiple screens, get them because even the second screen will give you 30 to 40% improvement in productivity. And I can tell you that people have gone to multiple screens now can't operate on one. So look for where your screens are. And I can tell you too, iPads and iPhones count as a screen. It will help you as a speaker so that, for instance, if you're speaking and you got to look at the chat, right, then have them up on the same screens as opposed to trying to flip around and find them. Have great speakers or headphones. I prefer speakers. So like right now, I don't have headphones on. I don't like to wear them all day. So right now, I'm actually listening to Naomi through a 600-watt speaker system.
Ooh, I have made it.
she's got the bass. The microphone is, I think, one of the most important aspects. I give 2 links to microphones that I have used in the pandemic that I have gotten remarks saying, you sound the best out of anybody I've heard in this conference. And so your microphone means a lot, right? If you hear somebody and it sounds like you're in a bathroom or it sounds like it's tinny, all you hear is the high pitch. I mean, that's what, especially as a speaker, that's what people have to listen to. Somebody said your audio quality counts for 75% of your presentation. Wow. So that's why you should take care of your mic, right? Cameras right here. So I've actually switched now. This is an iPhone 4, and it's amazing. It's a 4K camera. It's actually done a lot. But you've got to have a right camera, and more importantly, have it in the right part. I've seen a lot of cameras aimed at the ceiling, right, or aimed straight down. Those are all things that either you're looking up or down at the audience. Neither one is good for the audience or you. Lighting, right? So especially if you have daytime lighting and it comes through, it's going to change. So I ask people, what time is it now and what time are they presenting at? And will something change? Can you set it up where you can actually close the curtain so you can control that? Good look. So we're just, wear some better clothes. You don't have to go in yoga pants anymore. I actually have gotten into a suit for some conferences and not said anything, and people have actually noticed, right?
What do you tell a speaker when, you need them to alter their appearance?
I let them know. You know what? The best part of that I do is I give it as a suggestion, Naomi. Like, for instance, like if it was a superhero theme, I would ask you, do you have a cape around, right? And if you don't, it's fine, right. But it would be cool because, speaker Y is also getting a cape. And so the two of you could become a superhero. So things like that, right? Yes. And it is hard. I mean, I do, though, I have to try really hard to try and figure out how can I give that advice to somebody without offending them. Does that make sense? And a lot of times I can tell them this, right? I think if you'll do this, you'll look better to the audience.
Okay.
Most cool. People are like, oh, okay, I'm on that.
Yeah, I like that.
So fix your background, whether it's putting physical objects or a virtual background. I specialize in making these video-based backgrounds, but do something with that to make sure that looks and supports you and your brand. So many people are missing the opportunity. Like they're not putting their company's logo, somewhere in the background or their book or whatever it is they have, and they should. Ice water. This is a great tip too. I don't know. Do you know somebody named Roger Love, Naomi?
No, it sounds familiar.
So Roger Love is a voice coach, and he's been the voice coach to Tony Robbins and Aerosmith and many other people. And one of the key things he says is have ice water around.
Oh.
And so ice water, because your vocal cords are a muscle, but you can't ice them directly. So the only way you can keep them kind of cool is by using ice water.
Hmm. And I know sometimes planners put warm or room temperature water for speakers at an in-person meeting. So I wonder, what that difference is.
Lots of people used to say hot tea for when you have a sore throat, but
Right.
his defense for that is saying, look, it's a muscle, it's already swollen, right? Hot water is just going to make it bigger.
Well, that makes sense.
So this is like on the inflammation side, so you got to think about
Mm-hmm.
that. Okay, the next one is a clock. So look, I always got a clock here. I can change time zones, and it is always here because I run my meetings to the minute as much as possible. I'm trying to do my job, which is if I'm speaking to end exactly on time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the clock, the agenda. So I need the agenda up somewhere, whether it's printed out on paper or somewhere. Do a dry run. Number one red flag in a program is saying that we did no rehearsals.
Yeah, it's kind of laughable. You have to do rehearsals.
It sounds, yeah, but there's a lot of people are going, it's just a Zoom meeting. I can show up. And it's like, that's not, like I said, even people who are pro speakers who I know and have shown up in many different formats from like the best to the not so best. And I think a rehearsal gives you the opportunity to fix all these problems before you're on air.
Yeah.
The backup plan. So then have a B, C, and D. Like all of my speakers must have the phone number and they must give me the slide deck if I'm the producer. So if they disappear, and let me tell you, it has happened, Naomi, right? Have you ever had a keynote speaker just disappear off a stage?
Oh, yeah.
So in our world, what we did is we put up the slides. We already knew what was going on. We as the producer, myself or somebody else is assigned to engage the audience so that we don't miss a beat. And then this person called in. They let us know that their internet to their entire business park was cut.
Oh, my goodness. What are the odds? But it happens.
And so because she had a fully charged cell phone, she was able to complete the last half of her class just because I had the slides and all she had to do was talk on the phone. And I had a speakerphone and she could actually hear the audience. It was amazing. Security. All right. So make sure you have a plan for security, such as Zoom bombing. Zoom bombing is back. I thought I had a reprieve, but we had another one last week. And so know how to fight those things off. It was without having to end your meeting. So have a plan for that. And then the last one is be present. After all of this, whatever you do, when you get on stage to speak, right, remove everything else, all your other distractions so that you can be here and be present with your audience. And that's why I like things like a producer work, which is like, if you can just stay focused on your talk, then you can let your producers and everyone else take care of all the other things. So those are the key points that I have in my checklist.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Security, just wondering, have you seen an uptick in the need for security, seeing that we're doing virtual meetings, not only with Zoom bombing, but even with just social media, I guess, harassment or just defamation of character for a company? Have you had to deal with that?
Yeah. The Zoom bombing was the first one, and it did finally curtail, but definitely in the early pandemic, it blew up, at least in my personal experience. And so, and a lot of people changed their practices. They went and put passwords on their meetings. You don't chat the link directly into your Zoom meeting onto social media. At least even a one thing in between is a big help with that. Even though at one of our meetings, we actually we kind of use a quote unquote bouncer, which means that we'll admit somebody we don't know and put them in a breakout room. Then we require them to turn on their camera and talk to us. Right. And what's funny about that is Zoom bombers, when they have nobody to bomb, are bored. So they leave.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, there you go.
That's
There's
one
your
of the
answer.
ways. Yeah, that's one of the ways that we do that. Online, what was amazing is that I had a client and for this meeting, they wanted engagement. And then they told me, oh, but the chat for this meeting will be turned off. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And then
I love the chat. I need to have chats. I need to have reactions.
Chat is the second most engaging tool on virtual. The first one is this audio video channel, right? But again, only one person can talk. So that's why chat's so important. But this client had a member of their organization was bullied by somebody who was on chat. So they just blanket turned it off. And I said, okay, so I understand now where you're coming from, right? You did the right thing, right, to make a safe environment. So let us do this, which is our producers all know how to turn off that chat.
Right.
right? We also know how to remove somebody. So, it is very empowering. I got to tell you, Naomi, right? People celebrate when you can kick a Zoom bomber out and like clean up your meeting for the rest of the people. So anyway, so there's that aspect, but I do believe that you got to, look for different things and then have a plan on how to deal. 99% of the audience I've seen are great, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just this 1% that's trying to ruin it for everybody. But I think if you have a plan for them, then again, you have a meeting that will go back on point, as opposed to a meeting that gets onto under the press and becomes like, a cat meme for the week.
Yeah. Well, speaking of engagement, we've seen where people participate in the chat, they don't participate in the chat. Sometimes it can be really hard to get people to put your question in there, go ahead and chat and react to what's happening at an event. So I know in your book you talk about 5 factors that are important for teams and how a meeting performs. Can you go over those 5 factors and just tell us why they're so important? Because there's a certain level of safety that attendees need in order to feel as though they are able to engage. I would love to hear from you more on that.
Well, it's funny too, Naomi, because I created a class with this. Like I do a whole hour on this piece. And now to me, I think it's becoming almost more important than engage, the 6 things I showed you beforehand, because the challenges people are having are around this engagement. Mm-hmm. And even when people are technically capable, right, if they don't turn on their cameras, they're losing all this capability that they're possible to have. Mm-hmm. And so the backstory behind this is that Google, our good friends at Google, did 18 months on research, and they just said, what is in common with the highest performing teams at Google? And it turned into a project known as Project Aristotle. So you can look it up, Project Aristotle, Google, and you'll find all the research exercises. They have a lot of resources. I thought was great around it. But firstly, they're saying, what is it? Is it the composition of the team? Is it who your manager is? Is it how much, the equipment that we give you? Is it the building that we put you in? Is it any of those things? And in the end, they found in their research that it said the answer is no. Because you can have this wildly precise team, right? Mm-hmm. They make deadlines, they make all their milestones, they end on time. Mm-hmm. And they're a high-performing team. Because there's this other team over here that's a little wild, a little crazy, but they have the best out-of-the-box ideas, and sometimes they develop something that's like, game changer.
Right.
And they're saying, what do those 2 teams have in common? And so for anybody who's online, you can try and guess, but here, I'll give you the ones that I have here. And so...
There you go.
So here are the 6, right? So the 5th is impact, that team members think their work matters and create change. I think this is great too. For anybody who's a manager or any other piece like that, is listen to these 5 things. I think they're just really important. Team members think their work matters and create change. Number 4, meaning. Work is personally important to the team members. Number 3, structure and clarity. That team members have clear roles, plans, and goals. Sound familiar? Right? Mm-hmm. So again, roles and goals is something that I teach a lot of my teams. 2, dependability. Team members get things done on time and meet Google's high bar for excellence. So this is where dependability is where you start to build trust. Like if I delegate something to Naomi and she delivers, then I start to trust her more and more. So that's the dependability. But the number 1 factor was psychological safety. Team members feel safe to take risks and be vulnerable in front of each other. Again, team members feel safe to take risks and be vulnerable in front of each other. So now, what does this have to do about turning on your cameras? Or more importantly, right, because in the end too, Naomi, for me, it's no longer about turning on cameras, but it is about being engaged in a way that you want to be engaged. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is like you could be chatting, you could be, you may not say anything, but as long as you're engaged, you're thinking and watching the material and processing it, that's all I really want to know. Mm-hmm. And one of the secrets that we've seen here is this psychological safety. Mm-hmm. And what I'd like to say is for all the virtual meetings that I hold, I tell them that this is the invisible thing I'm building in this box, all right, that you can't see, and it's called psychological safety. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm looking to do is trying to get people to feel safe to take a risk. And so every time you chat or you speak, it's kind of like taking a risk here on virtual, right? Because there's not that much auditory channel. And so how do I get people to feel safe about that? Do we have time to show a couple of them?
Yeah, go ahead.
Here, I'll give you my, this is my superhero. We talked about superheroes, so here's the superhero part. This is called a Captain Win. And here's
Oh, okay.
10 easy ways to create psychological safety. All right. And the number one, the first one is what I call connection before content. Start your meeting even just a few minutes early. And when you come in, greet people as they come in, and just talk to people with no agenda before you start your meeting. So you'll see almost all of my meetings, I'll try and log in early and I'll greet you and I'll get to try and know some of the people or meet the people that I already know before the meeting. Okay.
Awesome.
Next one is air traffic control. So don't let people step on each other. Find a way so that every voice is heard. P, participation, right? Try and find a way for everyone to participate. And to me, too, it's not participating in the way that I want to. It's participating in the way they want to. And sometimes that's chat. Sometimes that's writing. Sometimes that's something like maybe a poll. So there's lots of different ways, but make sure that there's a way for people to participate. T is there's always a way. And what I mean by that is that we always start with the attitude that we can make it work for you somehow. We just got to figure it out. So let's say your mic doesn't work. We can start chatting you different things. And instead of telling, disparaging you, saying, oh, you can't get your mic to work. It's 16 months in a pandemic. Instead, we're saying, oh, well, let's try a different input. Oh, are you running this? So we'll ask a whole bunch of questions until we figure out a way. And then sometimes in this, there's always a way is we've actually gone and had people call in on their phone.
Oh.
And just so there's a way, right? It's like we don't know what's broken now, but we don't care as long as we can hear your voice in here. There's a way.
That's good.
A is acknowledgement, right? So it's like, thank you, right, Naoma, for inviting me here. It's just acknowledging people. That's another key way for it. What it says to people is saying, because you contributed, I want to thank you and reward you for that. So I hope you do it again. Okay. The invitations is something very, very unique. The way you ask questions will predict the percentage of people or the odds of somebody actually answering it or not. So, Naomi, have you ever asked a question and like nobody in the virtual meeting answered it?
Yes.
Yeah. I can tell you that the two tips that we have here for this are tells people specifically how to participate, give them choices, and then the last one is be comfortable with silence. So here, I'll show you the two parts here, right? Which is like, Naomi, what's your best part of the book? Oh, okay, well, that's fine. Well, let's just keep going. As opposed to, Naomi, why don't you just let me know verbally, what's the best part of the book that you've read so far?
Yeah, that makes sense.
No, now I'm really asking.
I like all the tips. I feel like it's a good resource for just, hey, what do I want to know something different or figure out a different way of engaging or icebreakers. And that's what I like. I like finding a solution with your book.
Yeah, I mean, there's tangible items, and I put them in the book literally because I've tested them sometime over this last 35 years that they have high odds of working. This be comfortable with silence is one that some people have a hard time with, but I can tell you, if you just wait, even in a group of like 5 to 20, somebody eventually will talk, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So this is what I call the invitation. I learned this because I was coaching 5 people who were going to facilitate breakout rooms. And one of the things that they did was that they ran over the question, right? So they were uncomfortable with silence themselves. They didn't give the opportunity for anyone to answer, so they kept talking. And I had to try and untrain them to do it. And it turned out that we had some of the most successful breakout groups because of that. Invitation. So the next one is the no sorry zone, right? So the no sorry zone. Oh, here, wait, let me see if I can tell you this. We developed this last year, which is I'm sorry is not necessary because we're all doing the best we can.
Oh, I like that.
In all of my virtual meetings, right, we have a no sorry zone. This has spread so much that all my attendees in my regular meetings, when they hear somebody say sorry, go, oh, this is a no sorry zone. Right? And it just gives people permission to not have to apologize all the time that they're doing something wrong here on virtual, right? We're all doing the best we can.
Exactly.
The W is welcoming. So it's just saying, hello, Naomi, right? I is impactful. I hope that one thing that I've done here, right, has made an impact for somebody who listened to this. And then just use people's names. It sounds simple, but just using somebody's names, right? You have the tag there. Use their names. So saying it, thank you, Naomi, for that. Oh, thank you, George. Hello, Frida. Or I'm
a wisdom seeker.
Right?
Yes.
So Anyway, so those are the 5 things. And there's a psychological safety. Yeah. Watch for this. See if you can gauge, do you have psychological safety in this meeting or not? And if you don't, it's most likely because you don't have one of these things.
Awesome. Wow. Thank you. I think that you've given everyone so many things to consider, and I just appreciate you being here. Can you tell me, John, what's next for you? I mean, you said you're working on an upcoming project. I would like to know what you're working on. Is it a new book, or what's going to be in John's future?
Oh, well, thank you, Naomi. Number one is, I'm making a commitment to stay here. So I'm going to work on improving virtual and making it even more engaging. And that's really the keys. Because right now, what am I working on now is like these screen transitions, like all these things that you're seeing here are all things that I'm working on to, show different views of what's possible, right? Oh, yeah, because look, what's possible with this? Watch this, Naomi. I just got finished this one. So now I can actually do this. So when you see my future presentations, soon I'm going to be able to do this.
Oh my goodness.
Right? Who have you seen? Like, maybe you've seen this much of most people, right? Or maybe this much. But down here, I actually going to be able to walk around and then change this background, but make it look like that I'm interacting with it. And that's really one of the innovations that I'm working on. I can credit Jim Carroll as a person who has inspired me. He's way ahead of me in terms of learning how to do this. But again, now I finally have gotten the things together to do that. The other piece that I'm doing here, Naomi, is that I have a great conference. And everybody who's listening actually can get a free ticket to this conference. October 19th through 23, I'm going to have the Engaging Virtual Meetings Conference 2.0. So there is a paid ticket into the front, but there's also a free ticket to watch it on Facebook in our Facebook group. And let me tell you, we're going to have 9 total speakers that will tell you the next level of virtual. And we're going to discuss and show examples of hybrid and many of the other things. Many of this is going to change by the time October hits. Wow.
So that one's a hybrid event, John. Yes?
I'm not sure yet. We're looking at it because we have some very strong partners in some cities, but we haven't decided to make it hybrid yet. Right now, it is definitely going to be virtual.
Okay.
We definitely have some things that we're talking to. One of the ways that we might make it hybrid is that we have a potential studio. So do you know them? Have you ever watched The Mandalorian, Baby Yoda?
Oh, yes. I'm all about that. Yeah.
So one of the technologies they use is they don't use green screens. They use what's called an LED wall. And so that's how they make you look like you're on a planet, is by making a movie and playing it on the LED wall. And then you look like you're there. And so they've actually have one now here near Seattle. And they had a potential idea that we might actually host the conference from that space.
Awesome. Wow. So that's a lot. So is that all?
The conference is definitely a big thing. I am in the process of writing my second book. It'll probably come out in 2022. But I do believe it's going to be around this psychological safety aspect. Right now, it's transformed into a 1-hour class that I teach once every 2 months, and it's called Turn on the Damn Camera.
Well, wouldn't that be your third book, though, or no?
Yeah, I guess that would be my third book, second in this series.
Okay.
But, so those are some of the elements that I'm working on. And then right now, what I'm working on is there are a lot of big conferences. Actually, the next big conference I'll be working on is Training Magazine's Tech Learn. And we did Training Magazine's February conference. That was 1,200 people. And it was one of the top in the training industry. And if you are looking for a conference to see some of the best virtual speakers, especially in the training field, they're all going to be here at TechLearn. So
awesome. Well, that sounds like a lot. I'm excited for this October conference. Don't forget to put the link in the chat. Other than that, why don't you remind everyone on how they can find and work with you? That would be awesome.
Yeah, you can go to engagingvirtualmeetings.com. Oh, by the way, the checklist that I showed you, there's a form out there. So if you put it on there, that will contact directly to me. And just let me know if you have a question. And you can go get that checklist. We also have video signs. So kind of like these little heart signs. We have 8.5 by 11 versions of signs that are there. They're free. So you can download them and add another aspect to at least even your virtual attendance. So yeah, everything's on that website, engagingvirtualmeetings.com. We also have a great Facebook group that I believe Naomi is a member of. We have 1,100 members. We crossed over 1,100 this week.
That's awesome.
And so these are all people that are really passionate about virtual meetings, and they're posting the latest Zoom updates. They're asking questions, and more importantly, other people are answering questions, so you can get multiple points of views, not just mine.
Yeah, I feel like that particular group is where I get a lot of the changes that are happening on Zoom. So I just appreciate you having it and posting all the updates there. It's been great to have a good resource for everyone.
Thank you, Naomi. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, John, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much, my friend. And hopefully we will be able to connect and collaborate again on another book club with your upcoming book or something shortly coming up. So thank you so very much. I appreciate you taking the time, and have a wonderful night.
Remember to engage, everyone. Thank you so much, Naomi, for the opportunity. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed that episode. Like I mentioned, it's a little bit longer, but definitely had some valuable insights and shares from John that you can use in order to make your virtual meetings really soar. It's been a pleasure spending time with you today, and I hope that you come back for another episode here at the Planners on Purpose podcast. Don't forget to go ahead and like or follow this podcast, and we will see you on the next episode.
Well, that wraps it up for this episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, hit the like button and tell us how much you enjoyed the show by leaving a message in the comments. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.